Welcome to the Invention Stories podcast, where we share stories of inventors who turn their idea into a product. Please visit our website at www.inventionstories.com. And now, from the Invention Stories podcast World Headquarters Studios in Morro Bay, California, is our host, Robert Baer.
Welcome to the Invention Stories podcast. I am your host, Robert Baer, and thank you for joining us. You're listening to episode 50 of the Invention Stories podcast with Conrad Lewis, the founder of eSight. And there's been a lot of great inventions in my lifetime, and I believe you can argue about what's the second best invention. But for me, creating the eSight electronic glasses that allow the legally blind to see with 20/20 vision is number one, and the only choice for episode 50 of the Invention Stories podcast. If you want a good cry, watch some of the YouTube videos of people who have been blind their whole lives see for the first time. We have Conrad Lewis on the line from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. So let's get started. I want to start off by asking, you attended both Carleton University and Queen's University, and said here you were first in your class. So did you really enjoy school as a kid? Did you like learning?
Yeah, I was one of those kids that was deemed profoundly gifted, you know. As soon as I got in the school system, then they were all over me. And they told my parents, look, he shouldn't be in regular school. And so he should go to a private school like a Montessori, where he can progress at his own pace. So my dad is quite a bright guy. He was top of his class at military college and was an Air Force pilot in the Canadian Air Force. So I guess, I get inherited some brains from him. I went 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and I got to high school, and I was too young, so they wanted to put me in an accelerated program through high school. My parents said no. They said, well, you're just a kid, and we as your parents make the decision now. You're progressing faster than your social development. That's not good. So I went through regular high school. My dad kept getting promoted, so he moved all over the place, all over Canada, States, and Europe. At NATO bases in Europe and NORAD bases in the States. So we traveled a lot, so I was always moving. So I went through every school system as possible in Canada. So, so I had no problem with school. So when it came time for university, in British Columbia, the province of British Columbia had scholarship examinations. So they were standardized across all schools, which unions hate because they don't like being measured. And they fought in most places in the world for years. But BC went ahead and put it standardized examinations in. And then from a short list of scholarship exams, you could choose 2 subjects, and based on your score on those 2 subjects, then you'd get a portion of your tuition paid for at university. So I guess I scored pretty high in math and physics. And based on my very high score in physics, I got approached by a professor who was putting together an accelerated physics program that would give you your bachelor's, master's, and PhD in 5 years. Now, this time my parents said, well, okay, you're old enough now that it's up to you. So I went for it. But I found that the people that I was with were kind of geeks. I had played lots of sports growing up. I tried to get a baseball team going, a hockey team, and go for a beer after a long day at school. And their idea of fun was to go sit in what I called their coffins in the backyard with all the telescopes. Because the role of the University of Victoria, where I was, in the physics program was astronomy. So their biggest goal in life was to be able to find a comet. And the way things work with comets is that they're named after the discoverer. So that would be their big achievement. So after that first year, where I thought it pretty hard, they're pretty bright people, I said to my parents, well, I think I'm going to go into electrical engineering, because that's the most physics intensive of all the engineering disciplines. Pay is good, and the prospects for employment look good. The computer boom was just starting. So I applied. They said, well, you have to go to East Coast University because your father is so high in rank now that there's no place for him on the West Coast. If he gets promoted, he'll get a job probably in Ottawa. So your mother would like you to be close by. So I applied to one of the best universities in Canada, Queen's University. Then I found you had to have. They wouldn't even talk to you unless you had at least 80% average. Some say 90%, but they won't have been it. Anyway, so I got accepted into second year, which I didn't want to do. I said, I want to go through a regular program like everybody else, 4-year program. So Now I was doing some pretty tough competition in this school. So I just floated to about the top 10% of my class without trying really hard. So I said, okay, I'm going to get to the top of my class. So I put together a program with some buddies that I had made to go through old exams, to do intellectual reading, and end up being top of my class. Out of 300 that started the program, only 55 finished, and I was first out of 55. So I got the departmental medal for top of my class there. Then, of course, I had lots of people actually to go to grad school. Well, I didn't go to grad school because, in my opinion, my professors were not real engineers. Now, of course, they were legally engineers, but they weren't real engineers because they did a great job of teaching you the science of engineering, but not the art and the craft of engineering, which you can only get by getting out there in the workforce. And they don't use the term, but apprenticing really basically what it is. So I said no, although I accepted some scholarships which were deferrable for 2 years. And now, the other thing about the university engineering departments is that they're almost always broke, and you get paid a nominal amount, which pays for your food if you're lucky, to tutor students and so on. So I said, well, I can go to the top engineering lab in the country and get paid, use the latest and greatest equipment, and learn a lot about the art and craft of engineering. So that's what I did. And then after, this was the R&D arm of Nortel. And so it was $1 billion project. And so I learned a lot about telecom and networking. I decided to go to a startup and then a second startup, and they both reached $1 billion in sales from scratch. So I got interested in the business side as well, because one of the problems with a big company was you got a specification on a remote marketing department that said, here's what you should develop. And I was curious why. Why this? Why not this? And so on. So I said, I'm going to learn about the business side. So I went into product management, which gives you the right to go into any area from manufacturing through to customer service. Learn the whole picture. The first company was bought out by a British company. The founders of that company started a new company. I joined that company. And my first job was to write the business plan for the company. I was thrown a blank pad and said, we need a business plan. You know the general art that we're good at. We wrote the business plan. That company grew to $2 billion. I rose to become executive vice president of business units. And we had 30 affiliated companies that we spun off. So after a while, when the company gets bigger, the guys that joined initially didn't like the bureaucracy of a bigger company. So in order to hang on to them, we said, okay, well, in exchange for access to certain of our intellectual property, you can have some shelf space on our marketing department, and we'll help you grow. So we grew 30 of those companies. The company made more money from the affiliates we called going public or getting bought than did from all other operations combined. Now that company was bought out by Alcatel during the telecom boom in the early 2000s. And so I said, okay, this venture capital business sounds exciting. With the time of the telecom tech boom. So I learned about venture capital, joined a Silicon Valley venture capital firm. Now, while all this was going on, my career was on rocket fuel. Then two of my sisters became legally blind from a rare genetic disease called Stargardt's disease, otherwise known as juvenile macular degeneration. Most people have heard of AMD, age-related macular degeneration. When you get old and your body stops renewing itself, then your eyes go, and you can lose your sight, quite common. So there was no fix for, they traveled the world looking for a diagnosis and then a fix, and they had the problem diagnosed at the Bascom Palmer Institute at the University of Miami, quite a prestigious eye institute. And then they were told, well, okay, so you have Stargardt's disease, which is the name of the Austrian ophthalmologist who discovered the disease in the first place. By this time, my dad was dying from prostate cancer. And because I was the oldest of 5 kids, it was kind of my job to look after the young ones. So the kind of deal that I had was that I had to look after my sisters. So I decided to review the state of medical science. What was the prospect for fixing this problem medically? And it was, there's usual lots of R&D, some scientific advances, blah, blah, blah. Nothing we can do. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to take my engineering know-how, my company building know-how, and I'm going to find a way to develop some smart glasses. One day, it kind of hit me. I looked at my electric toothbrush, and my glasses and said, okay, so let's see. There's a microprocessor in my toothbrush, but not in my glasses. And people fear dying. They fear going blind more than they fear dying. Okay, so convincing people to buy a solution is not going to be hard. So I said, okay, now my major in electrical engineering was electromagnetics, all things wireless, including the light. So I said, okay, so the perception. So I figured out, over the years, I've watched key industries evolve and identified a number of key technologies that would need to ripen further before I could put together a product that would be able to enhance vision and correct the deficiencies of these failed photoreceptors. And so one, of course, was the wireless industry. Now, it turns out that it's easy to beat the eye in spatial resolution using semiconductor technology of the day. The chip technology is far enough along that spatial resolution was not an issue. The tough thing to beat in the eye, it was color resolution, a normal eye. And your color vision is mostly in the center of your retina called the macula. So the last technology to mature, which I was in search of for a long time as a venture capitalist, I shamelessly took side trips whenever I could to visit companies that were developing. So even the best color TV display, whether it's CRT or plasma or LCD or any of the newer stuff, at best could resolve using standard definitions of 16 million colors. The human eye can resolve 24 million. Then I found a company in France through our Paris venture capital office. I don't tell these guys that, of course, but that had a new technology called organic LED. And that would be able to display up to 28 million colors. Now, it sounds like a lot, but it makes a difference, believe me, when you lose it. So the idea then was to develop some intelligent glasses that could compensate for the deficiencies of the failed photoreceptors, whether it be a genetic disease, an infectious disease, or an injury. A lot of combat injuries from IEDs affected vision in the eyes without destroying the eye. Now, we encountered a lot of skeptics. I put together a core team of people, and one guy, his job was to go find the top low vision specialists and bounce the ideas off them. And they all said, look, you guys have a pretty good understanding of the eye, because I told these guys that, look, forget all the biology jargon. The eye is merely a transducer which converts electromagnetic energy in the visible part of the spectrum, which is high frequency, to low voltage, low frequency signals that go up the optic nerve to the visual cortex. So don't be all dazzled by all this fancy jargon. One of the things you learn as venture capitalists, when there's lots of jargon in something like psychology or biology, it means they don't know much about it. It can't be reduced to a bunch of equations. They don't really get it. They don't really understand it. So I said, okay, well, so we have this wireless transducer which is failing. And so I set out to find out what are the normal equations, what's the normal transfer function, which a lot of doctors didn't understand because it didn't take much physics. As soon as you said the word physics, they kind of froze. You know, you don't learn physics much in your medical education. So physics, of course, is the science of everything. So, and I was good at that. So.
Oh, I didn't realize that 25 million people have lacked the gift of sight. That was pretty mind-blowing. And
it's a huge problem. It's so significant that it's viewed as a key component of national productivity. So every equivalent to the National Institutes of Health, like Health Canada and other countries, they have all identified this as a huge, unrecognized negative impact on national productivity, and therefore worthy of a lot of grants. It was an ophthalmologist at Sanford Eye Hospital in Palo Alto that cussed me out. He was so upset that I thought that a bunch of engineers from Ottawa, where the hell is that anyway, could do what many tens of very smart people at MIT and Stanford couldn't do. And so that just got our blood boiling, right? So we said, okay, well, I don't think those guys had any electromagnetic engineers on their staff, probably, in their projects, because no one could do it. I found a local guy who was a really top engineer who took his PhD in biomedical engineering at a local university here in Ottawa. And he said that I'd try to get him onto our advisory board because he's a very bright guy. And he said, well, he kind of scoffed what we were trying to do because he said he was a supervisor for his daughter's master's thesis in biomedical. He said, and I think her name was Jane. Jane tried to do the same thing, and we couldn't get there. And so He said, I'll join your board if you take me through enough of what you're trying to do that you are credible to me, and I'll help you. And I said, great. Okay, so I went to describing the several things that we were taking advantage of. And then he said, yeah, we tried that. Didn't work. That's not enough. And I said, I'm not finished, Pat. Then here's this other thing. And he banged the table and said, God damn it, Lewis did it to me again. Because we worked together before trying to solve engineering problems. And sometimes I would solve a problem that he'd been working on for years and he couldn't figure out. So he slammed the table. I couldn't believe. Maybe there's some hope. So he joined the team. And I thought because of all the negative vibes about nobody had done this, and a lot of well-meaning people had built magnifiers and so on that you could wear, but nobody had cracked the problem with smart glasses. So to restore sight to the visually impaired, of which there are 250 million people around the world, it's a big problem. There's like 8 to 10 million in the States. Canada has over 1 million. 1 in 10,000 families are affected by have a relative who has a visual impairment. It can't be corrected with conventional refractive eyewear like glasses or contacts. So it's a big, big problem, a massive market. So I got all the money together I made from my tech career, and I thought maybe it would take 3 tries at getting the glasses to work. But fortunately, I was able to assemble a pretty strong team of ophthalmologists, optometrists, and so on. An expert in the physics of vision, even the psychology of vision. Of course, the biology of vision was covered off. And so I, as a chief technology officer, had these 2 startups that grew to large size. Part of my job was to get together experts to brainstorm a solution to a problem that was pacing a project that was important to the company. So we got a presentation from a ophthalmologist specialty in the brain side of the computing part of seeing things. And he had thrown a problem to be resolved, and all these guys would go at it. And the guy who was expert in physics of vision, he would go through and analyze the problem and say, well, it looks like we can, you're trying to optimize these 3 things, Conrad. Well, we can do 1 and 2, but not number 3. You can look at the equation if you want, but you just can't optimize all 3 other than hit and miss. And so the neuro-ophthalmologist then stood up and said, well, you know what, Ray Jean, that was the name of the physicist, he said, it doesn't matter. The brain doesn't care about that 3rd thing. So just do the first 2. So we kept building up, we called them nuggets, kept building up nuggets of artifacts of the brain. Of course, the science-based engineering approach would say, okay, what's another transfer function to describe the way a normal eye works? And then what's a set of transfer functions? How do they change as the eye degenerates with the disease or is affected by the injury? Oh, well, we don't know that, but we'd be willing to do a research project to figure that out. And I said, well, I'm not interested in a research project. I have to get my sense of sight back. So I went home trying to depress, and I realized, hey, ophthalmology is pretty much all about self-assessment. So eye charts, vision charts, contrast charts even. When the old-fashioned optometrists, they don't do it that way now. They say, well, what's better, this or this? And they have a refracted one. They pick different, do you wear glasses?
I wear glasses.
So, okay, so when you go in to get fitted for a new prescription, they say, well, what's better, this or this? And they gradually zoom in on what lenses are right for you.
Right.
So it's all pretty much self-assessment. You need a skilled person to guide you through it, but in the end, it's self-assessment. So I said, okay, so of the 40 different variables, aspects of an image that are important, everything from brightness to color to contrast to size, acuity, can you see it? We got pretty good agreement on the ranking of which ones were the most important. And the one that really stood out way above the rest was contrast. So the ability, contrast charts, you'll see there'll be shades of gray, and you have to say which one is darker.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, so what we did, we put a knob in, that's the most important by far. And so we put a knob into the user control for the smart glasses. I could adjust the contrast. So to exaggerate a bit, if you're having trouble resolving the difference between one faint shade of gray and another, then you can adjust with a knob. You can adjust the contrast to make it like black and white, so you can tell. It makes a huge difference in vision. So But I said, okay, so we don't need to know the equations, but what we'll do is we'll give the user the control over the most important aspects of an image, like contrast and size. So we'll give a zoom lens, and which of course most glasses don't. They're fixed in their range. The reason that most people have vision problems, normal, not unusual vision problems, the normal lens of the eye is set up so that the image is focused on where the main sensor is in the retina, the macula. But that assumes the eyeball is spherically shaped. Well, guess what? Almost half the people don't have spherically shaped eyeballs. They tend to be football shaped. Just say bad design. So what the eyeglasses or contact lens do is just change the focal length of that natural lens so that the image is brought into focus right on the sensor. If you're nearsighted, the image is focused in front of the sensor. So what the glasses do is just change that focal length to match where the retina is. In the old days, the optometrists had no tools to measure the shape of the eyeball. They do now. They use ultrasound now to measure the shape of the eyeball. So if you've been to an optometrist recently, a modern optometrist, they don't even have a refractor anymore. They don't use that click adjustable lens on. You just put your eye up to a window in a box, and the computer just uses a ultrasound to measure the shape of your eyeball. And then the more modern practices will have so that they measure the shape of the eyeball, and then they will have a custom lens made for you within an hour. That's the modern optometrist. So we said, okay, we're going to change the whole idea of peripheral vision and central vision. The reason most of your retina is devoted to peripheral vision is for survival. That's how we evolved. If you couldn't detect the fact when you were a caveman walking down a jungle path that there was couldn't detect the motion of let's say a big lion behind a tree in the shade ahead of you, so then you got eaten. So your kids you didn't have children, and the evolution took that out. But if you could sense motion and see in the dark of the shadows that there was something there, then you survived, and your ability evolved. So human beings have eyes which have evolved to sense, the expression I saw it out of the corner of my eye. That's because their peripheral vision, which is the bulk of your vision in the eyeball, is very sensitive to motion, much more than central vision. And those are people who have gazed at a night sky on a clear night and see the incredible billions of stars of the Milky Way, and then switch their central vision over, and most of the stars disappear. They know that the light sensitivity of the central vision is much lower than the peripheral vision. So we took advantage of that. And many people know from high school biology that everyone has blind spots, where the optic nerve comes down from the brain and joins the retina. There's no photoreceptors there. So the brain learns to skip over that blind spot. What it does basically is it looks at the image up to the last photoreceptor and then extends that, makes the assumption that the image is going to continue with the same color and shading and so on the other side of the blind spot, the optic nerve connector. So the brain has a little algorithm built in from birth which can jump over that blind spot. In fact, you need a teacher to tell you how to find your blind spot. Most people have done that little test. Find your blind spot, watch the dot disappear, right?
Right.
So that's a list of nuggets. So if there's a photoreceptor, the brain has learned automatically how to jump over that. So we'll take advantage of that. The other thing is, everyone knows that when you use a telescope to zoom in on something, your field of view narrows. The good news is that if you have trouble seeing the bottom line of the eye chart, you can take binoculars or a telescope and zoom in and see that small print, but it's going to be shaky because the field of view is very narrow. But the brain has an interesting characteristic. When an image is close to the eyes, it magnifies by a factor of 4 with no diminution in field of view. Okay, great. So now, with a combination of optical zoom and digital zoom, just making it larger, we can get an image larger without narrowing the field of view. So another nugget to add to the list. So we had this very long list of nuggets which we built on by visiting. My sisters had made contact with a lot of low vision specialists around North America and Europe in our search to solve their vision problem. So we had a lot of good connections. Now the problem was a lot of these eye doctors get avalanched by people that are selling products, making products. So once we got the contact information from my sister, then we said, okay, well, Dr. So-and-so, we know that your time is very valuable. And we see that in waiting room they have lots of different testimonials for how good you are, how well trained you are, and so on. So what we'll do is, in exchange for up to maximum of 1 hour of your time, we will donate up to $2,000 to a charity of your choice. Then you could show the letter of thanks from the charitable organization on the wall in your waiting room. And they really appreciated that. They loved it. So that way they got access to lots of low vision specialists. And one guy in particular was the biggest eye clinic in the Boston area. Boston, of course, is to life sciences as Silicon Valley is to IT. So Boston's the place to go. We're not far from Ottawa, about 40-minute flight. So spent a lot of time there. So the biggest vision clinic in the greater Boston area is called National Eye Associates, just across the border in New Hampshire. And we met the managing partner for the clinic, and he said, low vision is a real problem for us. The population is aging. The other megatrend in the marketplace that affects us is people are getting more obese. If you get obese, you're more likely to get diabetes. You get diabetes, you get diabetic retinopathy. And so the aging and fattening of the population is going to destroy this practice because we can't solve the low vision problem people have. And so we lose money every patient that comes through the door. And as physicians, we're frustrated because we can't help them. So we said, well, what if we successfully develop this new eyewear? You won't have to inventory it with all the rest of the gadgets that people have developed over the years that don't really work all that well. So there's no cost of inventory. And if you refer a client to us and we ship in a pair of our eyewear, what's a good dollar number to put into your practice as a pure profit thing? And he said, well, $200. We said, well, how about $500? So he was delighted. He said, okay. So because the baby boom is just aging, retiring now, there's a tsunami coming of people that we won't be able to help that will destroy our practice. And so the other guys are all busy doing their ophthalmology job, and I'm trying to keep the practice alive. So he really liked that part. Again, that's the business side of engineering. So understanding business. So long story short, our first crack at the eyewear, we hired a marketing firm to come up with a fancy name for the eyewear. I think we came up with something called Olivios. Basically, everything to do with sight has been taken. Every word you can think of has been copyrighted in one way or another, trademarked. Vision is taken everywhere. So sight was wide open. So we said, okay, how about we'll call it eSight for the company. E, if you're a techno nerd, E for electronic sight. If you're not a techno nerd, then E can be for enhanced sight. Despite the money we spent on this marketing firm for a fancy, I think it was Olivio, some Greek name or something, which meant relief. So that's the best thing to come up with. So in the end, everybody started calling their smart glasses eSights. So we said eSight eyewear. We'll call it eSight eyewear. That'll be our fancy name. If you want to call it eSights, that's fine. So now in order to get funding, it wasn't a good time for me because we just spent a lot of money on a custom condo, a ski area nearby Whistler out in British Columbia. And I just built a big estate on the river here in Ottawa. So it wasn't a good time for me. So I put in enough money to get a working prototype because people said, do you have some references for us? I knew that as a venture capitalist, they called those references. They'd say, well, no one's done this before, but they have good ideas, but there's no way they're going to make it. Then we wouldn't have got any money at all. So I said, okay, forget venture capital. We're going to have to go, two things, we're going to have to go one investor at a time. We're going to have a working prototype to show that even if it's big and bulky, everyone believes that in electronics they can make things smaller, cheaper, over time. So we have to show that it works. So a lot of the doctors have said, never do it, no way. But all our facts are correct, right? Yes. So then, through my Air Force connection, my dad was head of the Canadian Air Force, so I knew a lot of pretty major people. Then I got a hold of what was new, a $100,000 helmet to enhance the vision of a fighter pilot. And there's an old damaged one, right? You used one. So, and with that, we built a front end with some of our ideas. And my two sisters became my patient advisors. I couldn't believe that none of the advisory boards actually had low vision people on the advisory board. So it was funny, but we wheeled this great big, must have weighed 50 pounds, giant thing, put it on my sister's head. She couldn't believe it. Strapped it down with about 10 straps. And I said, well, wait, we're going to just test our software out here to see if it does the job. And she could see something. She could see things she couldn't see before. She went from being depressed to very excited. And then over the next year or so, we made it smaller, lighter, cheaper, the usual electronics thing. And so we were told by optometrists that don't put more than 6 ounces. First of all, women decide on the someone who's nearsighted, roughly on average once a year they'll have to go in for a new prescription. Now women show up bang right on time because they like the fashion of upgrade of new glasses, right? New frames. Men have to be dragged and kicking and screaming by the women with duct tape holding it all together, and fingers are cracked and all falling apart, and the women are embarrassed for their men, so they drag them in. So make sure that you address women in your marketing. So that was good input. So they said no more than 6 ounces of weight on the nose, because if there's more than that on the nose, then you get a little red spot, a welt, and women don't like that. They don't like it. Men don't give a damn, but their women care, and they can roll things. So we patented a whole bunch of approaches to various straps and so on that would spread the weight of the eyewear such that it was about 4 ounces on the nose. So that was the tech. We got lots of patents out of that, which we traded for access to a better micro OLED chip from Sony that the French guys didn't get a second source for, which every buyer wants to see a second source. Every big buyer, like dealer. So the first version worked pretty well. Now, of course, I don't admit this officially, but with over 100 shareholders, because we went one shareholder at a time, because of the skepticism about our ability to pull it off, even with a working prototype. So they said, yeah, well, what happens when you go to make it real small? You know, doctors didn't appreciate that we could do things in electronics very fast. So we had a tough nut to crack, which was getting these things light enough and cheap enough that people would buy them. So we're now at the third version of the eyewear, eSight 3s we launched last year. And the total eyewear, everything weighs 4 ounces. People wanted mobility. They want to be able to walk around with it. And, of course, very by type of person, but they wanted to be able to walk and look up at the sky and see things. So we made it smaller and smaller and smaller. But we had one really tough technical problem, which we couldn't crack, which was an optical problem. So people are very sensitive to if they get dizzy. If you totally enclose them with a visor, and they get sick. A lot of people do. So we were, I think, talking to Chicago Lighthouse, which is one of the largest low-vision assistance organizations in the U.S. They have branches in many different cities around, NFL cities. So they said, well, we see everything because we're the largest low-vision operation in the States. We see lots of gadgets from around the world. What you have seems pretty good, except for God's sakes, why don't you do what we call a bioptic design, which is so you're best corrected with normal refractive eyewear, like glasses, so it becomes your new peripheral vision. And then you pull down a piece of your eyewear and a visor, and that gives you the new central vision, which is enhanced and augmented according to the settings of the user. And we said, okay, well, thank you very much. We'll be sure to list you in the patent. Oh, no, don't worry. If you do it, it's all yours. So they signed a legal document, and so we have a bioptic design now. So one thing that people like about our eyewear is that they can just flip the enhanced image up and look at the world through the best corrected vision glass. That becomes a new peripheral vision. And with that, they don't get dizzy, they don't get sick. That was a huge advantage that we have. And it's in our patent. So if you see somebody go by, remember your peripheral vision is very motion sensitive. So let's say you're sitting in a boardroom behind some windows to a hallway. Someone comes in the room, you see the motion. Then you flip the visor down for your central vision. And you see, oh, it's Fred, So it turned out to be spectacularly successful. Not just for now, well, firstly, with all these shareholders, I was designing something which is good for all forms of visual impairments. But because my sisters had Stargardt's disease, tweaking here and there to make sure that it was optimized for them, to increase the chance they'd be able to see. So they live just fine now with a 20/20 vision.
Wow.
In fact, they can crank up to 20/10 if they want to. And the new eyewear, the battery pack, which is good for 6 to 8 hours, gets inside the remote control. So the remote control you use to adjust zoom and contrast and brightness, and you can even shift color if you want to. But there wasn't a big demand for that. People don't mind being colorblind, except for certain professions. Like if you're an electrician, certain color codes of wires you can't see, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
But the general population, they got used to the fact they're colorblind. So the reds are a little bit purpley, so what, So there was a big demand for correcting color vision. So he left that out based on feedback on the market. Now, one problem we have is that the bulk of people who are visually impaired are unemployed because it's difficult to get a job when you can't see well.
Right.
So they don't have a lot of money. So what do we do about that? Well, that's a big problem. So we put together a fundraising group. Our motto, our slogan for the company is "Everyone deserves to see." That's our hashtag as well. And we're all over social media, right? Like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are all huge with the videos of and pictures of visually impaired people that we've helped. Over 2,500 now. Do about $2 million a month in revenue. So this fundraising assistance group will work with charities like the Lions Club, which is big on vision, and it's everywhere, Kiwanis. And it's interesting, people are so generous. We have a list of philanthropists that we may have helped somebody in their family, and they give money to charities. So they get a report once a year. And rather than their charity funding saying, well, we've got a breakthrough, and now we can help half the visually impaired people in the world see, right?
Wow.
They get some scientific thing that says, well, we discovered, based on our research project that you helped fund, we now identified some enzyme which is, at the root of all the problems from age-related macular degeneration. But it's not very, they're happy to keep giving. They have lots of money. They're very generous people. But, it's not, they call it donor fatigue, I guess. So we interviewed lots of charities and said, well, vision charities said, what do you need now? We need a breakthrough where there's no greater impact than seeing somebody get the gift of sight back. Oh. We want to give the gift of sight. And we understand that, lots of research required, very complicated problem, blah, blah, blah. And we'll keep funding that. But, if you want us to give more, show us somebody who has been blind, legally blind, and now they can't see. So we have 300 people in the funding pipeline right now that we do everything from we refer them to charities. There are a few insurance companies that will pay for our eyewear because it saves them money. You say, well, how does that work? Well, the most fear of all thing if you're an insurance company is disability. One woman that I can think of right now, one of our first clients, she was a legally blind artist. There has to be a legal definition of blindness because many insurance policies and government benefits trigger on blindness. And so it has to be a legal definition. The most common one, it varies by jurisdiction. The most common one in the world is that if you can't read the first line of the eye chart, which is usually a big E, you can't read that first line, you're legally blind. 2,200 or worse.
And is that makeblindnesshistory.com? Is that where people can find the information?
Yeah. Well, the best thing is go to our website, eSighteyewear.com.
Okay.
But Make Blindness History, hashtag, that's a good one too. Or makeblindnesshistory.com.
I agree with you. There's almost nothing that's more impactful than having somebody who can't see. That's one of the reasons I wanted to contact you is that's
unbelievable.
That's night and day.
Every night I see something. I check the social media sites and I find something new. Like about a week ago, I got on and my wife comes in because I'm crying at my computer, right? And I said, "Watch this," and I say, a young mother from Lebanon, who we convinced the telephone company in Lebanon to provide a chunk of funding for our eSight charity, and I have my own foundation for vision, the Lewis Vision Foundation, and this young mother had, you know what I was thinking about it, 3 small children, all with a pair of our eyewear on. And she said, how can I thank you for helping my children see? How the channel has done my life. I said, well, I can't, of course I can't solve the problems that you have in Lebanon with the terrorists and war and everything. But I'm glad to help your children see. So, it sounded a bit, the risk is sounding a bit blasphemous. When Jesus was trying to get a reputation built in Israel, when he first came to earth, when he grew up and realized his mission in life, then, yes, he helped the lame walk, he helped the deaf hear, but the thing that really struck for him was helping the blind see. There's no greater impact than helping the blind person see. Now, there's an interesting fact. The portion of the human brain devoted to moving images, remember that survival thing, so video, in other words, is greater than the portion of a dog's brain devoted to the olfactory senses of taste and smell. That's how important moving images are to the human brain. So that's why the videos are pretty emotional. So our awareness now is pretty high. Now, back to those skeptics in ophthalmology. When we first started shipping our product, some people would hear about it on social media. They'd print out a one-page description of our product, and some ophthalmologists would rip it up and say, that's crap, it can't work. Don't believe it. Including the low vision specialist, the guru for the largest city in Canada, which is Toronto, the Greater Toronto area. We were doing a lot of fundraising down there. It's our financial capital. And groups of ophthalmologists would say, okay, well, that sounds great. What does Sam think? This is Dr. Sam Markowitz. Now, he was the guy that tore up this friend of my sister's who was legally blind, tore up this piece of paper. He had developed a system using prisms that, with a lot of fairly painful training sessions, you could teach the eye to look, what they say, eccentrically. So, normal lens of the eye is designed to focus the image on the center of the retina. But maybe the photoreceptors there are damaged. So if you can teach the eye, using these exercises, the eye muscles, to move the image over to a different row of photoreceptors, then you can see now. So my sister tried out, quite awkward, painful, and big cumbersome thing on your head. So we were threatening his business because he had got his reputation based on his eccentric viewing prism thing, which moved the image slightly away from the failed photoreceptors. We were threatening it because with us it was just software. Because what we do is we capture the image with no camera. We had our biggest national broadcaster, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, do a piece on me and my sister and my company. We had about 6 minutes on the national news. And it had a huge impact. But then people still didn't believe it. They thought the videos were faked. When we got funding started with an angel group in Boston called the Boston Harbor Angels, I said, well, the life sciences capital of the world is just a 40-minute flight away. Why don't we go down there and get an angel group? If you're in Boston where there's 70,000 life sciences startups, then the ultimate imprimatur comes from Harvard Med, right? If you can get Harvard, say, this is awesome, this is great. How many zero do you want on your check, says the venture capital company, right?
Right. Yeah,
So they get a lot of fake jobs, though. So here we are, because of the reputation of this angel group, we're in a room with 24 vision neuroscientists. And these are the kind of guys that win Nobel Prizes, right? So they believed us enough because of the reputation of the angels that we got it. And I'm listening on the phone. I couldn't make it that day. Listening on the phone, and the lead angel from Boston Harbor Angels, he said, the thing's turning a bit sour. They think it's a fake because the same day we were there showing off our slide pack, all the stuff we can do, a fax arrived that a secretary ran into the room and said, the first results from the surgical approach to Stargardt disease just arrived. And it showed what an image looked like pre and post the use of stem cells for this treatment. And it was pretty bad. It was like a pretty grainy photograph. And at the same time, we were saying, here's a guy, we gave him 20/20 vision. He was 2800 when he came to see us. And so I guess the buzz in the room was, okay, time to throw these guys out. It can't be real. This is the real state of the art, this medical report from some journal. So, but we're about to get kicked out, and then somebody stood up and said, I couldn't quite hear every word, but I guess they were saying, okay, I think we probably should show these guys the door. And somebody said, no, we should get Ziggy down here. Ziggy was the senior vision neuroscientist, head of the department. And they called him Ziggy because he looked like and sounded just like Sigmund Freud. So very, very strong German accent. I speak a bit of German, so I got on the phone with him, and he said, this is amazing. And this is Nobel Prize material. But you have to understand, my people are very skeptical, because no one's going to do this. So I'm going to organize something here to help restore their... So I guess they had access to a clinic nearby. They arranged for a randomly selected guy to come out of the clinic with Stargardt disease and come over and try our prototype. And he came in the room, and the surgeon got way better, and the whole place just went crazy. And so I said, I was told it was okay to call him Ziggy. I wouldn't insult him. I said, so Ziggy, he says, how did you do this? And I said, well, Ziggy, it takes a long explanation, but there's no one thing we discovered. And then I guess I said, I don't think there's any Nobel Prize here. Then he went on to start talking about how, penicillin was discovered, all these other accidental discoveries that resulted in those Nobel Prizes. And I said, no, Zig, that's not why I'm saying no way we'll get a Nobel Prize. And he says, well, so what's your reason? I said, see, well, there's no way that a Nobel Prize in medicine would be awarded to a bunch of engineers. He laughed. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you were right. I agree. So I suggest, I'll make you a deal, Zygmunt. Now I'm calling him Zygmunt, right? He says, yes, what is the deal? What is your deal? Well, I'll make sure that you have access to all our engineers that came up with this idea and have access to a prototype to test. But any Nobel Prize is going to go to one of your vision neuroscience. I guess there's a lot of layers of the brain between the retina and the visual cortex where the function is not well understood. And so he figured that maybe we stumbled onto activating one of these layers, which was the reason for the inability of the person to recognize an image. So he said, yeah, that's what you will do for me. What must I do for you? And I said, well, when one of your staff, perhaps even you, whoever it is giving their acceptance speech for their Nobel Prize in medicine, that they mention my company. Yeah. We do that, no problem. Yes. So anyway, as far as I know, they're still beavering away, trying to do research whether or not we actually unlock something in this complex hierarchy in the brain related to vision. According to Center Medical Protocols, we did do in order to try to convince our public health insurers in Canada that this was real, because they did make a few phone calls and they would say, well, they would acknowledge that, yes, it is a very significant productivity issue. And off the record, there's millions of voters that are visually impaired that would probably vote for us if we agreed that through our public health insurance program we would pay for these glasses. But we need a blue ribbon panel of ophthalmologists to do a study on this. We have a clinical trial that demonstrated the efficacy of what our eyewear can do for people's vision. No, we need big names. These are all board certified, ophthalmologists and so on, but we need bigger names. So we said, fine, we'll do a tier 1 clinical trial, which we did, involving some of the top institutes in the world. Wilmer Eye Institute at Johns Hopkins, that skeptic in Toronto I talked about, that Dr. Markowitz, he now waxes poetic about our eyewear, what it does. Anyway, Kellogg Eye Institute in Michigan, the greater Detroit area, I guess, and the Bascom Palmer Institute at the University of Miami, they all got involved with this. We had one European institute, which was where I have a connection. My former boss at my last company, his niece is an ophthalmologist at the University of Vienna. And so the University of Vienna participated as well. So we had all these different outfits do a clinical trial. They're used to getting like 0.01% improvement from some new enzyme that they inject in the eye, right? And they saw like staggering results, like 5 lines on the eye chart, the way they talk about improvements in visual acuity. 5 lines on the eye chart. And the contrast improvement is so good that even the best camera the CBC national crew brought in couldn't detect the difference between the second toughest line and the toughest line. And when one of our low vision people put the eyewear on, our custom designed camera could tell the difference. That blew their minds. So since then, we've been doing the usual thing, scaling up the company, building awareness. We're in 45 countries now officially. We have dealers or distributors or other reps. We sell direct in all major U.S. cities. That's all the detail I have now. Of course, you start with the NFL cities, then you move down there. So the smallest city that we have a representative in, I think, is 50,000 people. So somewhere in Washington State. So we're working hard still with OHIP, which is the public health insurer in Ontario. I received a special vision award from the U.S. Veterans Administration, which they don't have every year. But every once in a while, when they do something special for veterans, they get the special award out. So I'm going to Washington in June, I guess, to receive the award.
Nice.
From some. So I got a phone call saying that they had awarded to me. Because we haven't completed every branch of the U.S. military, but of course, everyone knows how much the U.S. loves their military. It's one of and their veterans. One of the few bipartisan issues still around. My watching U.S. news channels for a distance. Unfortunately, there's very few things, I guess, the two parties agree on them. But everyone agrees about helping veterans. My dad always, when he worked with Americans in NORAD and NATO, he always said, well, I wish Canadians support their military the way the U.S. supports their military. And he had a good line, too. He said, Every neighborhood had a bully. We all know that growing up, especially my boys know that. And Canada and the U.S. are in the same neighborhood, written broadly. And the good news about the U.S. is that our neighborhood, the biggest, toughest guy in the neighborhood is a good guy. So he always had great admiration for the U.S. So our first video to go viral was a retired Air Force reconnaissance photographer. And we captured the moment when he was able to put the eyewear on, all of a sudden he can see. And he broke down in tears. So we got an Army guy and an 80-year-old U.S. Navy World War II veteran. So after those videos went viral, then I got the call from somebody at the USVA. I got the award last year on paper, but they said, well, the ceremony, we want to arrange, there's lots of Congress people that we want to have there for the ceremony that are very busy people. So do you mind if we do it next year? I said, no problem. So I don't have a date yet, and then the two top innovation awards in Canada, the Governor General's Award for Innovation, and something called the Manning Award from some rich guy who made his money in oil and gas out west. And Ernest Manning was a long-standing premier of Alberta, which are a big oil and gas province out west. So I've been nominated for those two awards by the biggest life sciences incubator in the country. So I'll hear in the next few months how I did on those. The Governor General's Award is just prestige. That's nice, but you can't take prestige to the grocery store or pay your rent with it. And I'm kind of cleaned out of cash after funding eSight, getting it off the ground. So, but the Manning Award does have money attached to it. Anyway, it would be a long shot if I win it, but I've been nominated for it, which is pretty good.
Cool.
I made the first round of cuts, apparently, on the Manning Award, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's unbelievable. I mean, that's incredible that your sisters were both blind. I mean, that's deeply personal, and that you were able to create a device to help them see again. I mean, what a great brother. I mean, I think that's spectacular.
Thank you. I was raised that way. You're the oldest kid. I was the oldest of 5 kids. 1 brother, 3 sisters. My dad would say, boy, if you look after your sisters. So he taught me that. My grandfather, who was a big rancher in the foothills of the Rockies in Alberta, he said, first you help your family. Start with females. That's your job as a man. Then friends, community. That's the deal. He always said that's the deal. He said nature, but he meant God. The deal with God, if he blesses you with a good brain, the deal is you have to help people using that brain. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. My grandfather was a great man. Real good common sense. My dad was a fighter pilot, which when you're a kid is pretty cool stuff. So, both are gone now, but, I wish they were here to see other little boys help his blind sisters. And one of my mom says, he knows, up in heaven, but, it's not the same as talking to him every day. Anyway, that's it. I'm getting kind of emotional. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. I thank you for.
We're going to be launching a new lower cost version of the eyewear, because right now it costs $10,000 US.
Yeah, I saw that on the video.
That's people to afford.
Yeah.
When people, you don't have to fight for share of wallet, as they used to say in marketing, right? First, you must convince people that you have the best solution. Well, guess what? We have a monopoly with all our patents and trademarks and copyrights. We are the only company in the world that can do this. Everyone else is magnifiers.
Right.
Nobody else can do this. Yeah. So, convince people to spend money with us, not somebody else, for our solution is not difficult. We're the only ones in town. The second thing is, you have to compete for share of wallet. Well, why would they spend money on their vision when they can spend money on, a new car or a snowmobile or whatever, right? So, jet ski. Well, when they fear dying, or less than they fear going blind, then you know that you're going to be pretty important. But then there are a lot of people that just don't have the money because they were never employed. So now our job is we've gone pretty far with charitable organizations. Now we're, just you do in the U.S., we have what's called duty to accommodate legislation. It applies to all businesses. You must reasonably accommodate a disability of your employees. Reasonably. You can't go out of business. So my sister now works for the company. Our R&D and manufacturing is here at Ottawa, and our marketing and sales head office is now in Toronto. That's where the money is. We've raised about $33 million now.
Wow.
And one of the world's largest tech companies has a partnership with us because the market is probably between $1 and $2 trillion worldwide.
Wow.
You'd recognize the name. I can't mention it because they're going to do the announcing. I'd be in big trouble if I do that. So within the next, I would say, sometime this year, you see an announcement from a giant tech company, a huge tech company. Everyone recognizes the name. And we're doing a lot of custom development for them right now. We're putting up some of their software into our eyewear. Anyway, so on and on it goes. So our next big wave will be, the first phase one was help the visually impaired have normal vision. Now we have to spread around the world. As I say the other day, when I saw this woman from Lebanon, there was also a poor man from Scotland. He got hit by a squash racket, and his vision was damaged in one eye. So he's legally blind in that eye. Then he got a football right in the other eye, so both eyes now are damaged. So the video I watched was him trying the eyewear and seeing for the first time again. So that's an example of injury. Of course, there's many people that have injuries from all kinds of sources. I mean, everything from Lyme disease, infectious disease, genetic disease, injury that leaves them intact. One of our most dramatic videos is of a woman whose boyfriend went a little ranky and attacked her with a knife.
Oh.
She came to her apartment in the Bronx, and then almost like he was possessed, maybe he was on PCP or something, but he, right when we saw him at the door, he stabbed her in the eye 56 times. So the video we have is of a really excellent surgeon, kind of top-notch person you can find in New York City, who salvaged, got the site up to a certain level. And then, if you're familiar with the show The Doctors, syndicated medical show in the States. So on The Doctors, we had this woman with her eyes healed now, and the surgeon was there, and they told her story, and they brought the surgeon up and thanked him, and then they brought the president of our company, eSight, brought some eyewear out and said, he said, here's a brilliant combination of medicine and engineering. Here's this highly skilled ophthalmic surgeon who did some brilliant work. And now with this eyewear, she can see 20/20 again. So that got a lot of hits too. Some of these videos that went viral, I got at 4 o'clock in the morning Eastern, and we're getting 50 hits a second.
Wow.
A second. Wow. Unbelievable. Must have blown their servers apart. So much, I guess, cloud computing saved the day. Yeah, so it's been quite a ride from total skepticism to big success now. So there's no greater gift than the gift of sight.
Well, you know how I located you. I found you on the, I saw that you were one of the 25 best inventions by Time Magazine. So if Time Magazine's saying that you're one of the best inventions of the year, and then when I read it, I'm like,
that's right.
This is the #1 best invention of the year. I mean, I can't imagine anything more. Like I said, one of my fears is losing my sight. And if I couldn't see and somebody had a product, no matter how much it was, that says it could help me see, I'm trying it. And if it worked, I mean, wow, imagine coming out of the darkness. All of your videos, and we'll put them on, that'll link, and they must just be incredibly impactful and emotional. And I mean, you're I can't thank you enough for creating this. I mean, you're really doing something wonderful in this world.
Thank you. Yeah, I love sitting on my computer, even though I end up bawling my eyes out every night. Like our Twitter site has probably got the best videos on it.
I'll definitely check them out.
Of course, Twitter, YouTube, and in every case, it's a social media site named .com/eSight eyewear. And, of course, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and then a little bit lesser extent Instagram. But Twitter is probably the biggest right now.
Okay.
A lot of our videos are on YouTube. You you get guided to all that on our website, eSighteyewear.com.
Well, that sounds good. I want to thank you for allowing me to interview you, and I know it's been a long interview here, but thank you so much for sharing. And I just wanted to add, if somebody did have an idea for an invention and they were really green, but they had a really good idea, maybe they had something to help people hear better or whatever, but what advice would you give them?
Other than innovative skills, the most important aspect of being an entrepreneur is persistence, right? So once you figure out what you want to do, just keep pounding away until you make it happen. And when I was a venture capitalist and a chief technology officer, we'd run into problems that we didn't think we could solve. And if you look in a related area, then you'll get somebody's perspective from that area, and it may have been solved somewhere else. So of every 10 deals that we funded as a venture capitalist organization, 7 of 10 are what we call crossover deals. Oh, you're going to solve this problem. Oh, it's just solved over here. I see it a lot. Canada, U.S. The big debate about, should we legalize prostitution, right? Well, look to Germany. Everybody says, all the horrible things that would happen. Look to Germany, where it's. When I was a kid, much to my parents' horror, watching German TV, I learned a little bit of German. I learned watching TV about the prostitutes were on strike, right? So in Germany, it's licensed, regulated, mandatory health checks, no criminal elements gone. So they solved the problem in Germany. So when you're going back and forth about an issue, go and visit someplace where it's been solved. And you want to find out what really happens. So, and be prepared. I cited this problem for 20 years. During the time my son became legally blind, and I had a solution for them. So don't invent everything yourself. Look at major technology trends. And when it came to things like very small, high-resolution displays, well, guess that's where the wireless business went. So internet became big on smartphones. Video became big on the internet. And smartphone has to be small, can't have a big display. So somebody will find a solution. Look in other industries and see if it's been solved. And rely on others to develop some of the technology. Use major technology trends to meet major market trends. Anyway, that's not exactly a simple little thing, but persistence above all this. The idea is good and solid. You'll find money to fund it. Committees don't change the world. Individuals do. Whether it's Canadian parliamentary committees or whatever I see on TV for U.S. Senate committees. What committees designed the camel, and what else did they work on? all the expressions. So don't be afraid when someone says there's no way you can do that. Okay?
You've been listening to episode 50 of the Invention Stories podcast, our interview with Conrad Lewis, the founder of eSight. And I want to thank Conrad for being our guest today. More information can be found at eSighteyewear.com. If you would like to become a sponsor of the Invention Stories podcast or have a suggestion on how we can make it better, please contact us at inventionstoriespodcast@gmail.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to write a positive review for us on iTunes. An easy way to get there is to go to www.inventionstories.com/review. More information and show notes can be found at our website, www.inventionstories.com. Thank you very much for listening today, and please tell a friend.